Welcome to Dreamy Mystery. Let's start with the question nobody asks about history. What if the past we've been taught, the grand narrative meticulously constructed by academics and enshrined in textbooks, isn't just incomplete, but fundamentally misleading? What if vast swathes of human achievement, entire epochs of advanced civilization, have been deliberately erased or buried, not by the sands of time, but by something far more sinister, or perhaps far more catastrophic? We're not talking about obscure footnotes or minor reinterpretations here. We're talking about a civilization, potentially global in reach, possessing technologies and an understanding of the cosmos that dwarfs our own. A civilization that, according to a growing body of alternative research, vanished in a cataclysmic event, leaving behind only tantalizing, often inexplicable clues. This is the world of Tartaria, a name that, for many, evokes the steppes of Central Asia and the horse-riding hordes of Genghis Khan. But for a passionate and often ridiculed community of researchers, it represents something far grander, a lost golden age whose echoes can still be found beneath our feet and within the pages of forgotten maps. The official story, they contend, tells us of primitive nomads and gradual technological progress. The alternative whispers of grand ornate cities, free energy, and a cosmic understanding that was literally wiped from the earth. This topic matters because it challenges our very understanding of human potential and the trajectory of civilization. It forces us to look at the world around us, the architecture, the landscapes, the very ground we walk on, with entirely new eyes, questioning every assumption about how we got here. If you're enjoying this journey through history, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And I'm always curious. Drop a comment letting me know what city and time zone you're watching from. There's something special about knowing this story is reaching people all over the world. Now let's ground ourselves in what Kerses quote Zrodest traditionally means. Historically, Sestias quote 1 desen or quote 2 descend was a blanket term used by Europeans from the Middle Ages until the 19th century to refer to a vast, ill-defined region of Central Asia, stretching from the Caspian Sea to the Pacific Ocean, encompassing parts of Siberia, Mongolia, and what is now Xinjiang. It was a land of mystery, feared and revered, largely populated by various Turkic and Mongol peoples, the Tatars, as they were often collectively called. Maps from the 17th and 18th centuries, like those by Homan or Sanson, frequently depict quote 3M as an immense, if somewhat nebulous, empire. This was not a single unified political entity in the way we understand nations today, but rather a geographical descriptor for the lands controlled by various nomadic and semi-nomadic groups, often at the fringes of known civilization. This is the accepted conventional historical understanding, a land of fierce horsemen, shifting tribal allegiances, and little in the way of permanent advanced urban centres. But here's the thing that blows my mind. If you look closely at some of these very same historical maps, particularly those predating the mid-19th century, you'll sometimes find curious discrepancies. Alongside quote 4 or quote 5, you might occasionally spot a reference to quote 6 and Great Tartary, depicted with a coat of arms, a flag, and cities that seem to defy the nomadic stereotype. And it's these subtle, almost subliminal clues, combined with architectural anomalies found globally, that fuel the alternative narrative of a lost, highly advanced civilization. This is where it gets genuinely interesting. The Tartarian Empire theory posits that a technologically sophisticated, unified global civilization once existed, stretching across continents, sharing a distinctive architectural style, and possibly harnessing advanced energy principles. Think of the grand, ornate buildings found in cities like St. Petersburg, Washington, D.C., or even Melbourne. Structures often attributed to 19th century industrial age construction. Proponents of the Tartaria theory argue that these buildings, with their colossal scale, intricate stonework, domes, cupolas, and often deeply buried ground floors, are not the work of 19th century methods, but relics of this far older, forgotten civilization. Consider the sheer scale. Many of these 19th century buildings, like the old post offices or government buildings across America, boast foundations that seem disproportionately massive, sometimes extending several stories below the current ground level. Why would a 19th century builder construct a basement that requires excavating 20 feet down, only to then bury the first floor windows? This isn't just about basements. It's about entire ground floors that appear to have been swallowed by the earth. This is the central pillar of the mud flood theory. The mud flood posits a cataclysmic global event, perhaps a century or two ago, that buried the lower levels of countless structures under meters of earth, silt, and debris. Imagine a scenario where vast quantities of liquefied earth were suddenly deposited across the globe, perhaps from a comet impact, a seismic event, or even an unknown atmospheric phenomenon. This wouldn't be a conventional flood of water, but a deluge of earth, suffocating and entombing the lower levels of existing cities. If you look at old photographs from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly from cities undergoing rapid expansion, you often see structures that appear to be half buried, with arched windows or doorways barely peeking above the street level, sometimes with temporary wooden stairs leading down to what would have been the original ground floor. Then, in later photos, these quote 10, have been neatly excavated and transformed into new ground floors or simply filled in. The official explanation for these buried buildings often involves rising street levels due to constant repaving or the natural accumulation of debris over centuries. But the sheer uniformity and global prevalence of this phenomenon, according to the theory, strains credulity. Why would so many cities worldwide, from San Francisco to Siberia, exhibit this exact same architectural anomaly? Grand, classical-style buildings with demonstrably buried ground floors? And why do so many of these buildings feature what appear to be, quote, 11th devices, like obelisks, spires, and domes topped with metallic spheres or intricate aerials, often dismissed today as mere architectural ornamentation? These, the theory suggests, were once functional components of a sophisticated atmospheric energy grid, a lost cosmic technology. This alternative narrative of Tartaria and the mud flood has gained significant traction online, fueled by a deep skepticism towards official histories and a voracious appetite for visual evidence. What began as scattered observations by independent researchers, often focusing on architectural oddities, has coalesced into a comprehensive, if controversial, theory. The consequence of this movement is a profound re-evaluation of our historical understanding. If a global, technologically advanced civilization existed and was subsequently buried or erased, then our entire timeline of human progress, from the Stone Age to the Industrial Revolution, might need a radical overhaul. This isn't just about questioning dates, It's about questioning capabilities. If these grand structures, which we attribute to 19th century labour with rudimentary tools, were actually built by a precursor civilization with advanced methods, it changes everything about what we believe humans were capable of and when. It forces us to confront the possibility that we are not at the apex of technological development, but perhaps recovering from a profound historical amnesia, slowly rediscovering what was once common knowledge. The very existence of such a theory, regardless of its ultimate veracity, highlights a growing unease with conventional explanations for the world's persistent anomalies. We've only just scratched the surface of the Tartarian enigma, introducing the concept of a lost global empire and the tantalizing, unsettling evidence of a quote 12 that may have buried its lower levels. But these buried buildings with their distinctive architectural style are more than just structural curiosities. They are for many silent witnesses to a forgotten past, hinting at a lost technology that harnessed the very forces of the cosmos. In our next chapter, we'll delve deeper into the specific architectural signatures of this supposed Tartarian civilization, examining the impossible construction techniques and the curious free energy devices that adorn these magnificent, often overlooked remnants of a world that may have been deliberately forgotten. We'll explore how these structures challenge our understanding of 19th century engineering capabilities and what they might reveal about the true nature of the lost cosmic technology of Tartaria. All right, let's dive deeper into this rabbit hole, shall we? Because once you start seeing the patterns, once you start asking the uncomfortable questions, it's genuinely difficult to go back to the neat, tidy version of history we've all been handed. Last time, we scratched the surface of Tartaria, this colossal, technologically advanced civilization that official narratives seem to have utterly forgotten. We talked about the mud flood, that cataclysmic event that might have literally buried their world, and the whispers of lost cosmic technology. Now let's peel back another layer and really look at the evidence that's staring us in the face. The very buildings that define our most iconic cities. You see, if Tartaria was a global empire, as the theory suggests, then it must have left its indelible mark everywhere. And when you start looking with fresh eyes, you realize that it absolutely did. We're talking about an architectural signature so distinct, so grand, and so prevalent, that it frankly blows my mind how we've collectively overlooked it. Think about the grandest buildings in your mind's eye, the colossal structures of St. Petersburg, the majestic federal buildings of Washington, D.C., the ornate marvels of Melbourne, the opulent palaces of Europe, even the turn-of-the-century gems in San Francisco. What do they have in common? They share an unmistakable aesthetic. We're talking about massive, multi-story edifices characterized by incredibly ornate facades, towering columns that seem to defy scale, intricate carvings that speak of an artistry lost to time, and an overall sense of monumental grandeur. These aren't just buildings, they're statements. They possess a consistency and design that transcends geographical boundaries, making you wonder, how did so many disparate cultures, supposedly developing independently, all arrive at such a remarkably similar, sophisticated architectural style simultaneously? The official explanation: that this was the Beaux-Arts or neoclassical style, a revival of Greek and Roman grandeur that swept the world in the 18th and 19th centuries. But when you look closely, when you compare a building in Russia to one in the US, to one in Australia, the similarities are so striking, so profound, that revival feels like a gross understatement. It feels more like a continuation, or perhaps more provocatively, a reappropriation. It's as if these buildings were already there, remnants of a shared past simply being attributed to new architects and new eras. And this brings us to the impossible construction techniques. Just pause for a moment and genuinely consider the sheer scale of these structures. We're talking about buildings constructed with massive monolithic blocks of stone, often weighing many tons, meticulously cut and fitted with a precision that would challenge even today's laser-guided machinery. How were these colossal stones quarried, transported, and then lifted dozens, sometimes hundreds, of feet into the air to form walls, arches, and domes? Official history tells us that this was all done with horse-drawn carts, rudimentary cranes, and an army of manual labourers. But when you look at old photographs, particularly from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, you often see structures of immense complexity being built or repaired with what appears to be shockingly primitive technology. It simply doesn't add up. The engineering feats required for these buildings, the intricate joinery, the precise alignments, the sheer volume of material, suggest a level of technological prowess that seems utterly out of place for the alleged period of their construction. Take the examples of structures like St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg, with its massive granite columns, or the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., with its colossal dome. We're told these were built in the 18th and 19th centuries. Yet similar structures today would require massive steel frames, sophisticated cranes, and advanced logistical planning. Were our ancestors truly that much more ingenious with ropes and pulleys, or are we missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? What if the construction we see in old photos was actually more akin to excavation and restoration? What if these buildings were already standing, partially buried, and the workers were simply digging them out, cleaning them up, and perhaps even stripping them of their original functional components? This leads us to the most tantalizing and controversial aspect of Tartarian architecture: the purported free energy devices. This is where the narrative truly veers into the realm of the cosmic and the mind-bending. The theory posits that the ornate spires, domes, obelisks, and metallic spheres adorning these grand structures weren't merely decorative. Oh no, my friends. According to this alternative history, these were functional components of a sophisticated global energy grid, harnessing ambient atmospheric electricity or electromagnetic resonance. Think about it. Almost every major historical building, from ancient temples to modern government edifices, features some variation of these elements. Obelisks, often capped with metallic points or pyramids, seem to pierce the sky. Domes, frequently topped with spires and spheres, crown the grandest halls. We've been taught they are symbols of power, prestige, or religious devotion. But what if their form followed a far more practical technological function? The theory suggests that these structures acted as giant atmospheric energy collectors, drawing energy from the ether, from the Earth's electromagnetic field, or even from cosmic rays. Imagine a world where energy wasn't derived from burning fossil fuels or splitting atoms, but freely harvested from the very air around us. A world where buildings themselves were power plants, silently humming with clean, limitless energy. Consider the Washington Monument, a colossal obelisk that stands as a symbol of American power. What if its true purpose, or at least its original purpose, was far more than symbolic? What if it was a colossal energy antenna designed to collect and distribute atmospheric energy across a city or even a region? The same could be said for the numerous obelisks found in cities worldwide, from London to Paris to Rome. Then there are the domes and spires, often topped with what appear to be metallic finials or spheres. We see them on cathedrals, parliaments, and grand exhibition halls. Are these merely lightning rods, as official history often explains, or are they, as the Tartarian theory suggests, crucial components for drawing in and distributing energetic frequencies? Some researchers even point to the use of specific materials like copper, brass, or even mercury within these structures, materials known for their conductive properties, as further evidence of their energetic function. And let's not forget the intriguing quote 22. Those geometrically precise star-shaped fortifications found across the globe, often attributed to military defense. While their defensive capabilities are undeniable, some proponents of the Tartarian theory suggest they might have also served as energy nodes, perhaps even resonating with specific frequencies to create protective fields or to stabilize the global energy grid. Their precise geometric patterns, often aligned with cardinal directions, could be more than just strategic. They could be energetic. The idea is that this advanced Tartarian civilization had mastered a form of, quote, 23, understanding the fundamental energetic principles of the universe. Their architecture wasn't just beautiful, it was functional, designed to integrate with and harness these energies. This would explain the seemingly impossible construction. Perhaps they had tools and methods powered by this very free energy that allowed them to manipulate materials with ease, to lift immense weights, and to achieve levels of precision that baffle us today. But if this was the case, if our world was once powered by this clean, abundant energy, what happened to it? The mud flood, my friends. The cataclysmic event that buried these structures, often up to their second or third stories, would have effectively crippled this global energy grid. Imagine half-submerged buildings, their energy-collecting spires and domes choked with mud and debris. The system would have collapsed, and in the aftermath, as we discussed, the survivors, or perhaps the orchestrators of a new world order, would have found a convenient way to strip these buildings of their true purpose, to repurpose them, to rewrite their history. They would have removed the cosmic technology, replacing it with mundane explanations of ornamentation or lightning protection, while simultaneously introducing a new, more controllable energy paradigm based on scarcity and fossil fuels. Doesn't it make you wonder? When you look at an old photograph of a grand building half buried with what looks like a metallic sphere atop a spire, do you still see just a pretty building? Or do you start to see the ghost of a lost technology, a whisper of a different past, a secret hidden in plain sight? This re-evaluation of architecture, of the very foundations of our cities, becomes a profound act of historical detective work. It challenges us to look beyond the official narrative and consider a world far more advanced, far more connected, and far more mysterious than we ever dared to imagine. And once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. The world suddenly looks very, very different. So, if this mud flood really happened, if it wasn't just a localized event but something truly global, then where's the evidence, right? you're probably thinking, quote, 26. And I get it, I truly do. Because the implications are so monumental, so utterly earth-shattering, that our minds naturally resist. We're wired for the narratives we've been fed, the history books we've memorized. But what if we just pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and look at the world around us with genuinely fresh eyes? What if I told you that once you see it, you can't unsee it? The evidence for a global mud flood, for buried cities and lost civilizations is literally everywhere. It's hiding in plain sight, etched into the very foundations of our most iconic structures, whispering its secrets if only we bother to listen. Think about it. How many times have you walked past an old building, perhaps in a historic downtown, and noticed something a little off? Maybe the ground floor windows seem unusually short, almost squat, as if they're half buried. Or perhaps there are entire rows of windows that are clearly below current street level, looking like basements, but with architectural grandeur that screams, quote 27. This isn't just a quirky design choice, my friends. This is the telltale signature of the mud flood. We see it vividly in cities like St. Petersburg, Russia, where countless buildings, many of them palatial and ornate, display this phenomenon. You look at these magnificent structures supposedly built in the 18th or 19th century, and you can't help but notice that their lower levels are clearly submerged. What are now considered, Bercest, quote 28, are often beautifully arched, full-sized windows, sometimes even with ornate lintels that would have been eye level with the street. But today, you're looking down at them. It's almost as if the entire city was built on a different lower plane, and then a colossal wave of earth and debris simply rolled over it, burying the first story, sometimes even more. And it's not just St. Petersburg. You find it in New York City, in the historic brownstones where the basement often has a full, elegant entrance that now leads to a sunken patio or is simply boarded up. You see it in Chicago, in London, in Paris, even in cities like Melbourne and San Francisco. The pattern is too consistent, too widespread to be dismissed as mere subsidence or quirky architectural trends. These aren't just buildings settling. These are buildings that have been engulfed. Consider the sheer volume of earth required to bury the lower levels of entire cities, sometimes meters deep. Where did all that material come from? Official narratives often offer explanations like, quote 30, due to accumulated waste and paving over centuries. But does that really account for the uniform, often fine-grained silt and clay that seems to have filled these lower floors? Does it explain the way some buildings appear to have been partially filled from the inside, with earth reaching up to the windowsills of what should be the ground floor? It stretches credulity, doesn't it? This brings us back to the why and how. What kind of event could deposit such vast quantities of earth across continents? Was it a series of localized floods, synchronized globally, or something far more cataclysmic? Some theories point to rapid sedimentation caused by a sudden shift in the Earth's axis, or perhaps a cometary impact that triggered widespread liquefaction of the planet's surface. Others speculate about advanced terraforming gone awry, or even a deliberate, if devastating, act of a previous civilization attempting to reset or cleanse the world. Whatever the cause, the effect is undeniable. A world literally buried under layers of forgotten history. And then there are the orphaned buildings. These are the structures that seem utterly out of place. too grand, too complex, too technologically advanced for the time they were supposedly built. Picture those monumental government buildings, the grand train stations, the libraries and museums that dot our major cities. Many of them share a common architectural language, a classical, often Greco-Roman aesthetic, but executed on a scale and with a precision that defies the supposed technological limitations of the 18th and 19th centuries. We're talking about massive stone blocks, intricate carvings, perfect alignments, and engineering feats that would challenge modern construction, let alone horse and buggy era techniques. It's almost as if these buildings were found rather than built, as if they were relics of an older, grander civilization, simply reappropriated, given new names, and a convenient, more recent origin story. This isn't just a theory. It's a profound observation that challenges us to reconsider the very foundations of our historical understanding. When we look at early photographs of these structures, particularly in America's frontier cities, we often see them standing in isolation, surrounded by vast stretches of undeveloped land, yet already decaying or partially buried. Who built them and how? Now let's circle back to the cosmic technology, because this is where it gets truly mind-bending. If Tartaria was a global civilization with a deep understanding of cosmic energies, then those distinctive architectural features we discussed, the obelisks, the domes, the spires, the star forts, they weren't just decorative. They were functional. They were the visible components of a global energy grid, a system designed to harness the very fabric of the cosmos. Imagine obelisks, those towering monolithic pillars often topped with a pyramidion, not as mere monuments to forgotten rulers, but as sophisticated atmospheric energy collectors. Many are crafted from granite or quartz, materials known for their piezoelectric properties, their ability to generate an electric charge under mechanical stress, or in this context perhaps to resonate with ambient electromagnetic frequencies. What if their height and shape were precisely engineered to draw down free energy from the upper atmosphere, or even from the telluric currents of the Earth itself? Their placement in ancient cities, often at nodal points, suggests a deliberate energetic purpose, and those magnificent domes and spires, often adorned with copper, gold, or other conductive metals, we're told they're for aesthetics or to house bells. But what if they were resonators, antennas, or accumulators? What if they were designed to amplify and distribute the energy collected by the obelisks, creating a network of wireless power that permeated Tartarian cities? Think about the Tesla coil, which generates high voltage, low current, high frequency alternating current electricity. Now imagine entire cities powered by a similar principle, but on a grander, more elegant scale, integrated seamlessly into the very architecture. This isn't just about electricity. It's about a complete understanding of vibrational physics, of resonance, of the subtle energies that permeate our world. Then there are the star forts, these geometrically precise, often star-shaped fortifications found across the globe, from Europe to Japan, from North America to Africa. We're taught they were for defense, their angles designed to create overlapping fields of fire. And yes, they could serve that purpose. But look closer at their intricate geometry, their often elevated positions, their precise alignment with cardinal directions or celestial bodies. What if their primary function wasn't military but energetic? What if these star forts were key nodes in the Tartarian energy grid, manipulating telluric currents, acting as gigantic capacitors or resonators, distributing energy throughout the surrounding landscape? Their intricate designs, far exceeding what would be necessary for mere defense, hint at a deeper, more sophisticated purpose. They could be energy hubs, vital for maintaining the balance and power of the entire civilization. This concept of quote 34 fundamentally challenges our modern understanding of power. We are accustomed to a world reliant on finite resources, coal, oil, gas, extracted, transported and burned at great environmental cost. We live in a world of centralized power grids, where energy is a commodity, controlled and metered. But what if there was a time when energy was abundant, clean, and accessible to all? A time when humanity lived in harmony with the planet, powered by the very energies that surround us? A world powered by free energy would be a world without poverty, without pollution, without resource wars. It would be a utopian vision, one that seems almost impossible from our current perspective. And perhaps that's precisely why this history has been so thoroughly erased. Because the mud flood, this cataclysmic event, wasn't just a natural disaster. It was, according to the theory, an opportunity. An opportunity for those who survived, those who held power or seized it in the aftermath, to orchestrate a profound historical reset. Imagine the chaos, the destruction, the widespread amnesia following such an event. It would be the perfect moment to step in, claim the remaining infrastructure, rewrite the history books, and establish a new paradigm of control. The motive? Control. Control over energy, control over information, and ultimately control over the narrative of human potential. If humanity truly possessed the knowledge and technology for free, abundant energy, it would fundamentally undermine any system built on scarcity and resource dependency. So, the remnants of Tartarian technology were either destroyed, reappropriated, or deliberately misunderstood. The grand, free energy generating architecture was rebranded as quote 35 or quote 36, its true purpose obscured beneath layers of academic explanation. This, quote 37, wasn't just about burying buildings, it was about burying an entire way of life, an entire world view. It involved mass relocation, the destruction of records, and a systematic re-education of the populace. Think about the world's fairs of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They showcased incredibly grand, often temporary structures, built with astonishing speed and then dismantled. Were these truly temporary constructions, or were they perhaps a way to display reappropriated Tartarian technology and aesthetics, to introduce a classicist quote 38's history while subtly erasing the old, to awe the public with what was presented as cutting-edge innovation, when in reality it was a shadow of a lost golden age? The early photographs of these fairs often show incredibly elaborate, massive structures, yet the crowd seems sparse, the cities around them still appearing nascent, as if the grand buildings arrived before the population. It challenges everything we thought we knew, doesn't it? It forces us to look beyond the surface, to question the official story, and to consider a history far richer, far more complex and far more profound than we've ever been told. The mud flood wasn't just an event, it was the turning point, the moment when humanity lost its cosmic connection, its free energy, and its true memory. But the evidence remains. waiting for us to piece together the fragments of a magnificent forgotten past. And as we continue this journey, we'll delve even deeper into the Quote 39, behind this colossal historical erasure, and what they truly gained by plunging humanity into an age of manufactured scarcity. The rabbit hole, my friends, goes deeper than you can possibly imagine. Alright, so we've journeyed through the architectural anomalies, the baffling scale of what some call quote 40 and the tantalizing whispers of cosmic technology. We've even dipped our toes into the chilling idea that the mud flood wasn't just a natural disaster, but a catalyst for something far more sinister, a grand historical reset orchestrated by forces unknown. And that, my friends, brings us to the precipice of the most profound question of all, doesn't it? The one that gnaws at you, that keeps you up at night once you start seeing the world through this lens. Who? Who had the motive, the means, and the sheer audacity to pull off such a colossal deception? Who plunged humanity into an age of manufactured scarcity, carefully curating our past to control our future? It's a question that makes even the most open-minded among us pause, because it implies a level of coordinated effort, a depth of manipulation that frankly blows my mind. We're talking about a global operation, not just a localized cover-up. This isn't about a few dusty archives being misplaced. This is about an entire civilization being meticulously scrubbed from the collective memory, their advanced understanding of energy and physics relegated to the realm of myth or dismissed as mere architectural flourish. Think about it with me for a moment. If Tartaria was indeed a global empire, or at least a pervasive network of highly advanced societies sharing a common technological paradigm, one rooted in free, abundant energy, then its very existence would fundamentally challenge the power structures that have come to dominate our world. If energy could be harnessed directly from the ether, from the Earth's own electromagnetic field, what need would there be for fossil fuels, for the massive industrial complexes that extract, process, and distribute them? What need for the geopolitical struggles over oil fields, pipelines, and shipping lanes? The answer, of course, is none, and that, my curious companions, is where the motive begins to crystallize. Imagine a world where energy is as free and accessible as the air we breathe. A world where every individual, every community could power their homes, their transportation, their industries without reliance on a centralized grid, without paying a penny to a corporate entity. Such a world would be one of unprecedented freedom, decentralization, and genuine abundance. It would be a world where the very concept of quote 41 would be an absurd relic. Now, contrast that with the world we inhabit today, a world where energy is a commodity, meticulously controlled, metered, and priced. A world where entire economies hinge on the fluctuating cost of oil, gas, and coal. Doesn't that disparity scream opportunity to a certain kind of mind? A mind driven by the insatiable hunger for control, for power, for resources, and ultimately over people? This is where the theory takes a chilling turn. It posits that after the mud flood, this cataclysmic event that buried so much of the old world, a surviving elite, a cabal, or perhaps even a newly emerging power structure, recognized an unparalleled opportunity. The world was literally being remade, its foundations shaken, its population decimated. The perfect blank slate. They saw the remnants of Tartarian technology, those grand structures, the obelisks, the domes, the spires that once pulsed with unseen energy. and they understood their true potential. But instead of restoring that free energy paradigm, they chose a different path. They chose to hijack it, to dismantle the global energy grid, to strip the buildings of their functional components, and to reframe this advanced technology as mere art or architecture. And then came the historical reset, a process that was far more insidious than simply relabeling buildings. It involved a systematic global campaign to erase the memory of Tartaria. Think about the sheer scale of such an undertaking. We're talking about the deliberate destruction of records, the burning of libraries, the manipulation of cartography. Imagine bonfires of ancient texts, maps meticulously redrawn to shrink empires and erase entire cultures, photographs censored or retouched to remove inconvenient truths. Consider the Cestius, quote 45, that proliferated in the 19th and early 20th centuries. While many were undoubtedly created out of genuine need, the Tartarian theory suggests a darker undercurrent. What if these institutions weren't just for lost children, but for a generation of young people who had no memory of the world before the reset? Children who could be systematically re-educated, indoctrinated into a new fabricated history, taught to believe in a narrative of scarcity and struggle, rather than one of abundant energy and advanced civilization. It's a genuinely unsettling thought, isn't it? That our very understanding of who we are, where we come from, might have been carefully crafted in the nurseries of a forgotten era. And then we come back to the world's fairs. We talked about them as showcases for new technology. But what if they were actually the grand reveal of reappropriated technology? Imagine walking through those magnificent expositions, marveling at the dazzling displays of electric light, the seemingly miraculous inventions. We were told these were the fruits of modern ingenuity, the dawn of a new industrial age. But what if those new inventions were simply the repackaging of ancient Tartarian principles, now presented in a way that ensured they remained under the control of a select few, rather than being freely available to all? The new narrative presented humanity as having just emerged from a primitive past, slowly but surely progressing through the Industrial Revolution. It conveniently skipped over any mention of a prior advanced civilization. It painted a picture of humanity struggling for every technological advancement, every scientific breakthrough, making it seem like a hard-won battle, rather than a rediscovery of lost knowledge. This narrative laid the groundwork for the modern world we inhabit, a world built on a foundation of controlled energy, centralized power, and carefully managed information. So, who are these controllers? The theory doesn't point to a single individual or a single easily identifiable group. Instead, it suggests a network of powerful families, secret societies, and emerging corporate entities who recognize the immense power to be gained by seizing control of humanity's past and by extension its future. They understood that by controlling energy, they could control economies. By controlling information, they could control minds. And by controlling history, they could control destiny. This isn't just about a few wealthy individuals. It's about the very architects of the modern global system. The ones who benefited most from the shift from a free energy paradigm to one of fossil fuel dependency. The ones whose empires grew exponentially as they monopolized resources and dictated the terms of progress. It's a truly staggering proposition, I know. It forces us to question not just the details of history, but the very integrity of the institutions that teach it to us. The scale of such a conspiracy seems almost unfathomable, doesn't it? To rewrite history on a global scale, to suppress evidence so thoroughly, to re-educate entire generations. But think about the prize: absolute control, the power to shape human civilization for centuries to come. When the stakes are that high, when the potential for dominance is that immense, suddenly the unfathomable starts to look less like fantasy and more like a chillingly logical strategic move. This isn't just about a lost civilization, it's about lost potential. The potential for humanity to thrive in abundance, to explore, to create, unburdened by the artificial constraints of scarcity. The loss of Tartaria's cosmic technology wasn't just a technological setback. It was a profound shift in the trajectory of human consciousness and freedom. As we peel back these layers, we're left with an unsettling question. How deeply ingrained is this manufactured history? And what does it mean for us, living in the shadow of this grand deception? We're only just beginning to scratch the surface, my friends. In the coming chapters, we'll delve even deeper into the mechanisms of this control, exploring how this historical reset continues to impact us today, and what clues might still exist for those brave enough to look. Now, if the mud flood hypothesis and the Tartarian civilization theory already have you questioning everything you thought you knew, prepare yourself. Because we're about to dive into the most challenging and perhaps most unsettling aspect of this entire narrative: the who and the why. We've talked about the evidence, the architectural anomalies, the lost technology, and the cataclysmic event that reset history. But who stands to gain from such a monumental deception? And how could such an elaborate global cover-up even be possible? This is where the idea of a Quote 51 truly comes into focus, and with it, the shadowy figures or entities that supposedly orchestrated it. Think about the sheer scale of the mud flood, a global event that buried vast swathes of human civilization. The chaos, the destruction, the loss of life, the obliteration of infrastructure. It's a blank slate, isn't it? And for those with a certain mindset, a blank slate isn't a tragedy. It's an unparalleled opportunity. Imagine, if you will, the world after this cataclysm. Survivors scattered, disoriented, their memories perhaps fragmented by trauma, or even, dare I say, by some unknown aspect of the event itself. The advanced technologies of Tartaria lie buried, inert, or broken. The global communication and energy grids are down. This is a moment of profound vulnerability, a vacuum waiting to be filled. And according to the alternative history theorists, it was precisely at this juncture that a specific organized group, a cabal, an elite, a powerful collection of families or secret societies stepped in. Who were they? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The theory posits they were either pre-existing power structures, perhaps those who saw the Tartarian civilization as a threat to their own desire for control, or they were individuals and groups who emerged from the chaos with enough resources, knowledge, and ruthlessness to seize the moment. Their motive is starkly clear: absolute control. Control over resources, control over information, and ultimately control over the very destiny of humanity. How do you achieve such control in a post-cataclysmic world? By controlling the narrative. You rewrite history. You dismantle the old systems and replace them with new ones that serve your agenda. You ensure that the survivors, the children especially, are educated in a way that erases any memory of the previous world. This brings us back to the chilling concept of the Quote 52. Not just places for children without parents, but perhaps institutions designed to indoctrinate a new generation, devoid of any prior knowledge, into a fabricated history and a new controlled paradigm. They become blank slates themselves, ready to be programmed. Consider the mechanisms of this control. It requires a global effort, a coordinated assault on truth. We're talking about the systematic destruction of records, the manipulation of cartography, those detailed old maps that show Tartaria as a vast empire suddenly vanish or are relabeled. We're talking about the co-opting of emerging academic institutions to craft a new, linear, and meticulously sanitized version of history. Governments, newly formed or re-established, become tools in this grand deception, enforcing the new narrative and suppressing any dissenting voices or archaeological finds that might expose the truth. But what about the technology? The incredible cosmic technology of Tartaria that we discussed, the free energy systems embedded in the very architecture of their cities. This was arguably the biggest threat to the new controller's agenda. Free, abundant energy for all means no scarcity. No scarcity means no control over resources. No control over resources means no power over the masses. So the first order of business for this emerging elite would be to dismantle that system. Think about those metallic finials, the domes, the obelisks, the spires that adorn Tartarian-style buildings across the globe. We suggested they were functional components, part of a vast interconnected energy grid. How did they work? The theories are fascinating and point to a profound understanding of natural laws. Perhaps they harnessed atmospheric electricity, drawing it down from the sky through resonant frequencies, or tapped into telluric currents, the electromagnetic energy flowing through the Earth itself, much like the legendary Vril energy or the principles Nikola Tesla himself explored. Perhaps they utilized principles of scalar waves, creating a non-Hertzian, non-linear energy field that powered entire cities silently, cleanly, and wirelessly. This wasn't just about powering a light bulb. This was about creating a harmonious, sustainable civilization. Buildings weren't just structures. They were power plants, communication hubs, and perhaps even healing centers, all tuned to the Earth's natural frequencies. Imagine a world where energy was as free and abundant as the air you breathe. It blows my mind to even conceive of it. Now, if you're this controlling elite, what do you do with such technology? You can't just let it exist. So, you strip the buildings of their functional components. You repurpose them, sometimes turning them into grand government buildings, banks, or museums, places that project power and authority, but whose true purpose has been meticulously erased. The obelisks become mere monuments, the domes become architectural flourishes, the metallic spires become decorative lightning rods. The knowledge of how they worked is suppressed, destroyed, or sequestered, and then you introduce your own energy paradigm, one based on scarcity, on consumption, on fossil fuels. This new paradigm requires massive infrastructure, centralized power plants, and a global system of extraction, refinement, and distribution, all of which can be owned, controlled, and taxed. It creates a hierarchical system where energy is a commodity, not a right, and where dependence on the controllers is absolute. This, my friends, is the foundation of the industrial age as we know it, This brings us to the world's fairs of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Remember how we touched on them as showcases for reappropriated Tartarian technology? Let's dive deeper into this. These fairs, presented as celebrations of human ingenuity and progress, were held in grand, often temporary structures that uncannily resembled the very Tartarian architecture they were supposedly inventing. Think of the Chicago World's Fair of 1893, the St. Louis World's Fair of 1904, or the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo in 1901. These events showcased new marvels like electricity, wireless telegraphy, and incredible feats of engineering. But what if these weren't new inventions at all? What if they were demonstrations of rediscovered or re-engineered Tartarian technology, presented to a bewildered public as the cutting edge of a rapidly advancing civilization? It's like finding a broken smartphone, figuring out how some of its basic functions work, and then presenting it to a primitive tribe as your own invention. The narrative crafted at these fairs was powerful. Look how far humanity has come from its primitive past. Look at this incredible progress. But the underlying truth, according to the theory, was far more sinister. Look what we have discovered, what we now control, and what we will dole out to you in measured doses, ensuring you remain dependent and oblivious to your true inheritance. Many of these magnificent World's Fair buildings were temporary, often constructed with plaster and lath over a frame, designed to be dismantled shortly after the event. Why build such incredible ornate structures, often with classical proportions and Tartarian motifs, only to tear them down? Could it be that they were simply facades, temporary shells built around repurposed Tartarian structures or technologies, which once showcased needed to be either hidden again or their true nature obscured? Or perhaps the knowledge of how to build them permanently and functionally had been lost, so they could only create impressive but ultimately ephemeral replicas. The implications are staggering. If the World's Fairs were essentially dog and pony shows to introduce controlled versions of Tartarian technology and solidify a false historical narrative, then much of what we consider modern progress is built on a foundation of deception. It means the energy systems we use today, the very structures of our industrial society, are not the peak of human achievement, but a deliberately limited and controlled alternative to a far superior, cleaner, and more abundant system that was systematically suppressed. The shift from a world of free cosmic energy to one of scarce, expensive fossil fuels fundamentally altered the trajectory of human civilization. It spurred industrialization in a particular way, creating massive wealth for a few and dependence for the many. It created the very economic models that govern our lives today, models built on consumption, competition, and the constant need for resources that can be controlled and monetized. So, when we look at the world around us, when we see the grand, inexplicable architecture, the buried ground floors, the consistent global style, and then we consider the official historical narrative, a linear progression from primitive to modern, a profound dissonance emerges. The theory of Tartaria and the mud flood isn't just about a lost civilization, it's about a deliberate global act of historical amnesia, perpetrated by a controlling elite who understood that whoever controls the past controls the future. And if this is true, what does it mean for our present? And what does it mean for our potential, which has perhaps been systematically curtailed for centuries? These are the questions that truly keep me up at night, Alright, so we've touched on the world's fairs, these dazzling spectacles that, in the Tartarian narrative, weren't just exhibitions of human ingenuity, but rather carefully orchestrated showcases designed to reintroduce new technologies that were, in fact, ancient, re-engineered, and crucially, downgraded versions of what humanity once possessed. It's a truly mind-bending concept, isn't it? What if the very foundations of our modern technological paradigm were built on a colossal deception, a deliberate obscuring of a far superior past? Let's dive deeper into this rabbit hole, because understanding the quote 59 of this historical reset, the mechanisms by which Tartaria's cosmic technology was not just erased but systematically replaced, is absolutely pivotal. We're talking about nothing less than the great energy downgrade, a shift from cosmic abundance to controlled scarcity. Imagine, if you will, a world where energy wasn't something you paid for, something you connected to a grid, something that required massive power plants burning finite resources. What if, for centuries, perhaps even millennia, humanity lived in harmony with the Earth's natural energies, drawing directly from the atmosphere, from telluric currents, from the very fabric of the cosmos? This is the core of Tartaria's lost cosmic technology. We're not just talking about, Gracias quote 60, in a simplistic sense, like a perpetual motion machine. We're talking about a profound understanding of universal principles, resonant frequencies, scalar waves, the ether, the zero-point energy field. Picture structures like the grand cathedrals, the ornate government buildings, the majestic opera houses, and even those enigmatic star forts, not just as architectural marvels but as functional components of a global energy grid. What if their domes weren't just aesthetic, but acted as receivers, concentrating atmospheric electricity? What if their spires and obelisks weren't merely decorative, but broadcast towers, distributing this energy wirelessly across vast distances? Think about it. No unsightly power lines crisscrossing the landscape, no reliance on coal, oil, or gas. Lighting, heating, even the propulsion of vehicles, all potentially powered by an omnipresent, clean, and virtually limitless energy source. Imagine the quality of life, the lack of pollution, the sheer human potential unleashed when the fundamental struggle for energy is completely eliminated. This isn't just a technological difference, it's a paradigm shift of epic proportions, a completely different way of interacting with our planet and each other. So, how do you dismantle something so integrated, so fundamental to a civilization, and replace it with something inferior? This is where the cabal or the controlling elite comes into sharp focus. Their strategy wasn't just destruction, it was re-engineering and recontextualization. After the devastating mud flood, which, remember, could have been a natural cataclysm exploited or even an orchestrated event, the world was left in ruins, the lower levels of Tartarian buildings buried, their sophisticated energy systems crippled or rendered inaccessible. This presented a blank slate, an unparalleled opportunity for a complete historical and technological reset. Consider electricity, for instance. Tartaria, according to this theory, might have utilized atmospheric electricity or resonant frequencies for power. Nikola Tesla, a figure often celebrated but whose most radical ideas were suppressed, hinted at such possibilities. What if his vision of wireless power transmission, of tapping into the ether, wasn't a futuristic dream, but a rediscovery of ancient Tartarian principles, The new electricity showcased at the world's fairs, the one we all rely on today, is alternating current AC, delivered via a sprawling, vulnerable and incredibly expensive grid. This system requires massive centralized power plants, constant maintenance, and most importantly the meters. It's a system designed for control, for profit, for scarcity. The downgrade is stark, isn't it? From a potential decentralized free-flowing energy system to a centralized, metered, and highly profitable one. This wasn't just about making money, it was about control. Control over resources, control over populations, control over the very pace of technological advancement. If energy is free and abundant, who needs governments or corporations to provide it? The power dynamic shifts dramatically. And it wasn't just energy. Think about transportation. What if Tartarian civilization had mastered forms of propulsion that defy our current understanding? Perhaps anti-gravity technology or resonant frequency-based airships that could traverse continents silently and efficiently. The narrative suggests that these superior forms of travel were replaced by steam engines, railroads, and eventually internal combustion engines, technologies that rely heavily on finite fossil fuels, create pollution, and require massive infrastructure investments, again, ripe for centralized control and profit. Communication is another fascinating area. What if Tartarians had a way of communicating instantly across vast distances, perhaps through energetic resonance, or even a form of collective consciousness, a kind of global telepathy facilitated by their energy grid? Contrast that with the laborious process of laying telegraph wires, then developing radio waves which, interestingly, were initially explored for their quote 64 potential before being commercialized, and eventually the internet which, despite its apparent freedom, is still heavily controlled and monitored. Every step of this quote 65 seems to move us further away from inherent human capabilities and closer to dependence on external controlled systems. And what about healing? If Tartarian science understood resonant frequencies and the energetic blueprint of the human body, what kind of medical advancements might they have possessed? Perhaps sound and light therapies, bioenergetic healing, or vibrational medicine that could prevent or cure ailments without invasive procedures or pharmaceuticals. The quote 66 medical paradigm established after the reset relies heavily on chemical interventions, invasive surgeries, and a highly profitable pharmaceutical industry. Another system built on scarcity of health and control over remedies. This shift from abundance to scarcity is the cornerstone of the historical reset. It's not just about energy, but about creating a new reality where resources are perceived as finite, where competition is paramount, and where humanity is constantly striving, constantly consuming, constantly dependent. This narrative of scarcity is deeply embedded in our economic systems, our education, our culture. We are taught to conserve, to manage resources, to pay for what we use. But what if this entire premise is a manufactured illusion, designed to keep us in a state of perpetual lack and subservience? To fully cement this new, fabricated history, the Cabal had to do more than just destroy and re-engineer technology. They had to control the narrative, literally rewriting human history from the ground up. This brings us back to those orphanages we've discussed. Imagine a world plunged into chaos after a global cataclysm, countless children displaced, disoriented, without memory of their past or their families. These children, the us quote 72 of the mud flood, would have been the perfect blank slate, gathered, housed, and, quote 73, in institutions that would instill in them a completely new version of history, a history devoid of Tartaria, devoid of cosmic technology, devoid of the true human potential. They would have been taught that their ancestors were primitive, that technology progressed linearly from steam to electricity, that resources were scarce, and that authority figures, the very ones orchestrating the reset, were benevolent guides leading them to a new, brighter future. Textbooks would have been rewritten, maps redrawn, historical records selectively destroyed or altered. Any lingering evidence, any, quote 74, buildings would be retrofitted, their true purpose obscured, their age conveniently misattributed to the 19th century. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? That our entire understanding of human history, our scientific progress, our very place in the cosmos, could be a carefully constructed fabrication. That the world we inhabit, with all its struggles and limitations, is not a reflection of humanity's true potential, but a shadow of what was deliberately taken from us. The implications are staggering. If this theory holds any truth, then we are living in a deliberately constrained reality, our collective consciousness moulded by centuries of historical amnesia. The problems we face today, climate change, energy crises, economic inequality, even many health issues, might not be inherent challenges of human existence, but rather engineered consequences of a system built on deception and scarcity. When you start to look at the world through this lens, everything changes. Those grand old buildings aren't just pretty architecture, they whisper tales of a lost science. The official historical timeline isn't a sacred truth. It becomes a suspicious narrative, and our modern technological marvels, while impressive, begin to feel like pale imitations of a glorious past. It prompts us to question everything, to look beyond the surface and to genuinely consider, what if humanity's true story is far more extraordinary and far more suppressed than we could ever imagine? Alright, so we've peeled back the layers on the world's fairs, haven't we? What an incredible spectacle of deception. A grand illusion designed to dazzle and distract, to showcase, quote 75, technologies that were, in reality, downgraded echoes of a forgotten past. But here's the thing. You can't just put on a show and expect everyone to forget an entire global civilization overnight. The world's fairs were just one piece of a much larger, more insidious puzzle, the systematic eradication of Tartaria from our collective memory. Think about it. Imagine a world where sophisticated, free energy technology was commonplace. Imagine cities powered by atmospheric electricity, structures that resonated with the Earth's natural frequencies, providing abundance for all. Now, imagine a cataclysm, a quote 76, that buries this advanced infrastructure, leaving a traumatized, disoriented population in its wake. This is the fertile ground upon which a new narrative can be sown, a dark canvas upon which a controlling elite can paint a completely different history. This wasn't just about putting on a good show at an exposition. This was about a full-spectrum assault on truth, a meticulously orchestrated campaign to rewrite history, to control the very fabric of human understanding. How do you erase a global empire from memory? You don't just bury its buildings, you bury its books, its maps, its art, its very identity. And most critically, you reshape the minds of those who survived. We're talking about a memory hole on an unprecedented scale. Libraries burned, records reclassified, ancient texts lost or reinterpreted to fit the new sanctioned timeline. Have you ever wondered about the sheer volume of historical information that seems to vanish, only to be replaced by a conveniently linear, often simplistic narrative of human progress? It's almost too neat, isn't it? From a primitive past through various ages, all leading to our current industrial paradigm. A paradigm, by the way, that requires us to pay for every single watt of energy, every single drop of fuel. Coincidence? I don't think so. This brings us to one of the most chilling aspects of the historical reset, the re-education and indoctrination of an entire generation. What happens to a society after a global catastrophe like the mud flood? There would be chaos, displacement, and, tragically, countless orphans, children, vulnerable and impressionable, with fragmented memories of a world that no longer exists, or perhaps a world they were too young to fully comprehend. These children, these blank slates, became the primary targets for the new narrative. Consider the quote 80 that crisscrossed America in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, ostensibly saving children from urban poverty by sending them to rural families, or the countless orphanages that sprung up globally during this period. What if these institutions weren't merely acts of charity, but rather highly efficient mechanisms for social engineering? Imagine gathering these children, stripping them of their past, their family names, their cultural heritage, and then systematically imbuing them with a completely fabricated history. A history where Tartaria never existed. A history where free energy was a fantasy. A history where humanity was always struggling, always striving from a primitive state, grateful for the advances offered by the new industrial masters. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? To take a generation, traumatized and malleable, and mold their understanding of reality from the ground up. To teach them that the grand, ornate buildings they saw half buried were simply basements or cellars built in an era of superior craftsmanship. A craftsmanship, ironically, that we can barely replicate today, even with all our modern technology. The very idea that people in the 1800s were digging out multi-story basements with shovels and horse-drawn carts across entire continents, often through solid rock, defies all logic and engineering common sense. Yet, this is the story we're told. Look closely at the official explanations for these buried structures. Oh, the city just grew around them, or they built a new street level. Really? For every single building, in every major city, on every continent, and always, resulting in perfectly buried lower windows, often with grand arched entrances now serving as mere sub-street level curiosities. It's an insult to our intelligence, once you start to question it. The magnificent architecture of Tartaria, once pulsating with cosmic energy, was rebranded. The domes and spires, originally designed to collect atmospheric electricity, became mere ornamentation. The intricate carvings, potentially mnemonic devices or functional components of a larger system, were dismissed as Victorian excess. We are told that our ancestors, just a few generations ago, were capable of building these colossal, exquisitely detailed structures with rudimentary tools and incredible manual labor, only to then forget how to do it and settle for bland utilitarian boxes. Does that truly resonate with you? Does it feel like a natural progression of human ingenuity, or a stark and sudden downgrade? And what about the energy itself? The paradigm shift from abundance to scarcity wasn't just about controlling resources, it was about controlling us. Imagine a world where energy is free, where every home, every community could tap into the ambient energies of the planet. What would that do to the power structures of today? It would dismantle them. It would empower individuals to an unprecedented degree. This is why the memory of Tartaria's cosmic technology had to be not just suppressed, but actively ridiculed and vilified. The Quote 89 wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate strategy. Replace clean, free energy with dirty, expensive fossil fuels and centralized grids. Create a system of dependence where every light switch, every appliance, every movement costs you. This wasn't just about profit. It was about control. It was about creating a perpetual state of manufactured scarcity, keeping humanity tethered to a system that benefits only a select few. The physical scars of this grand deception are still all around us, if we only bother to look. Those perfectly aligned windows peering out from below ground level in historic districts. The Quote 90T entrances that look suspiciously like main entrances. The vast, empty, Quote 91 beneath cities that are dismissed as mere utility tunnels, when their scale suggests something far grander. These aren't just architectural quirks, they are silent screams from a buried past, testament to a cataclysm and a subsequent cover-up that reshaped our entire world. We are left with a history that feels incomplete, fragmented and often contradictory, a history that asks us to believe in an exponential leap in construction capability followed by a sudden amnesia, a world where monumental feats of engineering were achieved with primitive methods, only to be abandoned for less impressive ones. It's a narrative riddled with inconsistencies, and once you start pulling on these threads, the entire tapestry begins to unravel. The question isn't just what happened, but why it was so thoroughly erased. What profound truth about human potential, about our true history, was so dangerous that it had to be buried under meters of mud and generations of lies? This isn't merely an academic exercise. It's a journey into the heart of our own identity, a quest to reclaim a heritage that was stolen from us. The echoes of Tartaria are still there, whispering from beneath the asphalt and behind the official narratives, waiting for us to listen. Are you ready to hear them? Are you ready to question everything you thought you knew? Because the deeper we dig, the more unsettling, and ultimately the more empowering the truth becomes. Okay, so we've journeyed through the architectural anomalies, the whispers of a lost civilization, and the terrifying prospect of a global mud flood that buried an entire epoch of human achievement. We've peeled back the layers on the world's fairs, exposing them not as celebrations of human ingenuity from scratch, but as grand exhibitions of re-engineered, downgraded Tartarian tech, presented as brand new. But now we have to ask, how do you keep such a monumental secret? How do you maintain control over the narrative when the very ground beneath our feet and the buildings towering above us scream a different truth? This, my friends, is where the true genius, or perhaps the true horror, of the historical reset really comes into focus. It's not enough to just bury buildings and dismantle energy grids. To truly control a population, you must control their minds. You must control their memory. And for that, the controlling elite needed an infrastructure of indoctrination, a pervasive system that would ensure the new, fabricated history became the undeniable truth for generations to come. think about it. Imagine the sheer scale of such an undertaking. After the cataclysm, after the mud receded and the dust settled, what were they left with? A world littered with the incomprehensible remnants of a superior civilization and a population traumatized, disoriented, and largely orphaned. This wasn't a problem for the elite. It was an opportunity, a blank slate, ripe for rewriting. The first and perhaps most crucial tool in their arsenal was the education system. This wasn't just about teaching kids to read and write. It was about shaping their entire worldview. Textbooks were meticulously crafted, presenting a linear, progressive history of humanity, starting from primitive origins and slowly, painstakingly, evolving towards the, let's just quote 92, age. The grandeur of Tartarian architecture, reassigned to later, less technologically advanced periods, its true purpose, stripped away, replaced with explanations of mere aesthetics or the brute force of manual labour. Suddenly those colossal buildings, those intricate domes, those impossibly precise structures attributed to the late 19th or early 20th centuries were explained away. Quote 93, we're told, "People were very industrious back then, but we know better, don't we? We've seen the evidence. We understand that to recreate such structures today, even with all our modern machinery, would be an undertaking of staggering cost, time, and logistical complexity. Yet, we're asked to believe they sprang up across the globe simultaneously, with horse-drawn carts and rudimentary tools. It's genuinely mind-boggling when you stop to truly consider it. Academic institutions were established or co-opted, becoming bastions of the new narrative. Historians, architects, scientists, anyone who dared to question the official timeline or the origins of these structures, would find themselves marginalized, ridiculed, or simply starved of funding and recognition. The system was designed to reward conformity and punish dissent. Experts were created, not necessarily to uncover truth, but to validate the established story. They became the gatekeepers of knowledge, ensuring that only approved information filtered down to the masses. But it wasn't just about formal education. The elite also understood the power of media and propaganda. As printing presses became more widespread, so too did the ability to disseminate information or misinformation on a massive scale. Newspapers, magazines, popular literature, all became vehicles for reinforcing the official history. Any lingering folk memories, any oral traditions that hinted at a different past, were slowly eroded, dismissed as superstition, or actively suppressed. Think about how quickly certain narratives can take hold when there's no counter-narrative allowed to flourish. It's a psychological masterpiece of control. And what about science and technology itself? This is where the true tragedy of the reset becomes agonizingly clear. Instead of nurturing the understanding of cosmic energy, of resonant frequencies, of the abundant free energy systems Tartaria clearly utilized, scientific inquiry was redirected. It was steered towards a paradigm of scarcity, of fossil fuels, of centralized power generation, and of technologies that required constant consumption and replacement. Why? Because control over energy is control over everything. If energy is free and abundant, what need is there for the systems of debt, taxation, and labour that underpin our current world? The elite needed us dependent, and a dependency on metered, scarce energy was the perfect mechanism. So, while we marvel at the marvels of, quote 95, science, we have to ask, what have we lost? What avenues of discovery were deliberately closed off? What potential technologies were shelved or forgotten because they didn't fit the new, controlled paradigm? It's not just about what they gave us, it's about what they withheld. This systematic eradication of memory created a profound vacuum. Imagine growing up in a world where the true history of your ancestors has been erased. You're told you're the pinnacle of progress, yet everywhere you look, there are structures that defy your current capabilities. You're taught that humanity is constantly struggling, constantly striving, yet the evidence of a past golden age is literally buried beneath your feet. This psychological disconnect, this subtle unease, is something many of us feel, even if we can't quite articulate it. It's the ghost in the machine, the lingering echo of a truth that refuses to be completely silenced. The orphan generation concept is particularly poignant here. These weren't just children who lost their parents, they were children who lost their past. They were raised within the confines of the new narrative, genuinely believing the stories they were told. For them, the official history wasn't a lie, it was their lived reality. And as these generations grew, married, and had children of their own, the new history became ingrained, passed down as fact, solidifying its hold on the collective consciousness. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? To have your very identity, your place in history, dictated by an agenda you never even knew existed. But despite all these meticulously crafted systems of control, despite the propaganda, the re-education, and the suppression, the truth has a funny way of poking through. It manifests in those architectural anomalies we've discussed. The half-buried windows, the grand entrances leading nowhere, the impossible precision of stonework. It lives in the subtle hints found on old maps, in forgotten texts, in the very etymology of words. It's the feeling many of us get when we look at certain historical photos or visit old cities, that sense of grandeur, of scale, of an underlying intelligence that just doesn't quite fit the official narrative. This is the ongoing legacy of the historical reset. We are living in a world built upon its foundations. Our energy crises, our environmental degradation, our very economic models. Many of these can be traced back to the deliberate dismantling of Tartaria's free energy grid and the imposition of a scarcity-based paradigm. We're constantly told to conserve, to ration, to pay more, when potentially an abundant clean energy source was once freely available to all. Imagine a world where energy was no longer a commodity to be fought over, no longer a source of geopolitical power. What kind of world would that be? What kind of human potential could truly be unleashed? It's a world that was taken from us, or at least hidden from us. Our reliance on centralized power, our dependence on fossil fuels, the constant push for progress that often feels like a treadmill leading nowhere. These are all symptoms of a deeper ailment, a historical amnesia deliberately induced. But here's the powerful part. We have the ability to break free from this manufactured amnesia by asking questions, by critically examining the evidence, by daring to look beyond the surface of the official narrative. We begin to reclaim our own history. We begin to unlock not just the secrets of Tartaria, but the secrets of our own human potential. This isn't just about dusty old buildings or forgotten maps. It's about understanding who we are, where we truly come from, and what we are truly capable of. The journey we're on, my friends, is a journey of rediscovery. It's about piecing together the fragments of a deliberately shattered past, not to dwell in conspiracy, but to illuminate a path forward. Because once you see the patterns, once you understand the mechanisms of control, you can begin to make different choices. You can begin to demand a different future. And that, to me, is the most exciting, most empowering revelation of all. We are not bound by the rewritten past. We have the power to write our own future, informed by a truth that has been patiently waiting to be unearthed. So, let's keep digging, let's keep looking, because the deeper we go, the more incredible the story becomes. So we've journeyed through the architectural anomalies, the whispers of a lost cosmic technology, and the chilling possibility of a global cataclysm, a mud flood that wiped the slate clean. We've even dared to speculate about the great energy downgrade and the orchestrated historical reset, a profound deception designed to strip humanity of its true heritage and potential. But as we stand here, amidst the ruins of a forgotten past and the carefully constructed facade of our present, one monumental question looms larger than any other. Who are these architects of amnesia? Who is this controlling elite, this shadowy consortium that supposedly orchestrated such an audacious, world-altering coup, and what does their ongoing influence mean for us right now? This is where the narrative truly gets unsettling, isn't it? Because pinpointing the exact identity of those who orchestrated such a monumental historical erasure is like trying to catch smoke. It's not about pointing fingers at a single individual or even a clearly defined organization. Instead, we're talking about something far more insidious, something that operates in the deep currents of power across generations, perhaps even across millennia. What if this isn't a modern phenomenon at all, but a continuation of an ancient agenda? Think about the very concept of quote 101. Not just royal or aristocratic lines, but families whose power and influence have been meticulously cultivated and passed down through the ages, operating behind the scenes, pulling strings from the shadows. Perhaps these are the same forces that have always sought to control human destiny, whether through religious dogma, economic systems, or the manipulation of knowledge itself. Consider the idea of secret societies. Throughout history, we find whispers of groups operating outside the public eye, bound by oaths and esoteric knowledge, often with grand, long-term visions for humanity, or, more accurately, for their version of humanity. Could it be that these societies, far from being mere clubs for the elite, are actually the custodians of a hidden history, aware of Tartaria and its technology, and actively working to suppress its memory? The very structure of such groups, with their layers of initiation and compartmentalized knowledge, would be perfectly suited to maintaining such a profound secret across centuries. The goal, as we've discussed, seems to be absolute control. And what better way to achieve absolute control than by severing humanity's connection to its true power source? Not just free energy, but also its inherent capacity for self-governance, its spiritual potential, and its collective memory. If you can convince people they are inherently primitive, prone to conflict, and reliant on centralized authority for their very survival, you've won the game before it even begins. So, how do these hidden architects maintain their grip today? It's not just about the initial reset, it's about the perpetual maintenance of the narrative. First, let's talk about economic control. The great energy downgrade wasn't just about replacing free energy with fossil fuels, it was about creating a system of manufactured scarcity. Think about it. If energy is abundant and free, what does that do to the value of oil, gas, and electricity? It crashes it. And if energy is controlled, it becomes a commodity, a lever of power. This led directly to the establishment of our modern financial systems, centered around fiat currency, debt, and the relentless pursuit of material wealth. Isn't it fascinating how our entire global economy is predicated on scarcity, on competition, on the idea that resources are limited and must be fought over? What if this is a deliberate construct, designed to keep us perpetually striving, perpetually dependent, and perpetually distracted from the bigger questions? Then there's political control. The historical reset didn't just erase Tartaria, it seemingly ushered in the era of modern nation-states, with their carefully drawn borders, their nationalistic narratives, and their perpetual conflicts. What if these divisions, these wars, these seemingly intractable geopolitical disputes are all part of a larger strategy? Divide and conquer. Keep humanity fractured, fighting amongst itself, and it will never unite to challenge the true powers that be. We see governments rise and fall, leaders come and go, but the underlying structures of power, the financial institutions, the international bodies, often remain untouched, guiding the global agenda regardless of who is in charge. And what about the social control? This is perhaps the most insidious aspect of their ongoing influence. Our education systems, for example, are designed to instill the official narrative, to teach us what to think, not how to think. Critical thinking, genuine inquiry into alternative histories, and questioning authority are often subtly discouraged. Our media, from news outlets to entertainment industries, acts as a powerful propaganda machine, shaping our perceptions, directing our attention, and reinforcing the accepted reality. Look at the constant stream of sensationalism, division, and fear. Why? Because fear is a powerful tool for control. A fearful populace is a compliant populace. Even our healthcare systems, while ostensibly designed for well-being, often seem to focus on symptom management rather than root cause, on pharmaceutical solutions rather than holistic health. What if true health, vitality, and longevity, potentially achievable with the kind of cosmic understanding Tartaria possessed, would make us too independent, too resilient, too difficult to control? And let's not forget technological suppression. It's not just that Tartarian technology was buried, it's that any subsequent discoveries that threaten the established paradigm are also swiftly suppressed or co-opted. Think of the countless, quote 104's inventors who have been ridiculed, marginalized, or mysteriously disappeared. What about advanced medical breakthroughs that challenge the pharmaceutical industry, or agricultural innovations that offer true food independence? The pattern is consistent. Any technology that empowers the individual, decentralizes power, or offers genuine abundance seems to vanish into obscurity, while technologies that centralize control, like surveillance tech, or generate profit, like fossil fuels, are aggressively promoted. This ongoing influence manifests in the very fabric of our modern lives. The energy crises we face, the environmental degradation caused by our reliance on fossil fuels, the ever-widening gap between rich and poor, the pervasive sense of anxiety and dissatisfaction. What if these aren't just unfortunate side effects of progress? but the intended outcomes of a system designed to keep us in a state of perpetual struggle. When you start to see the world through this lens, the pieces begin to click into place. The overwhelming debt burdens of nations and individuals, the constant push for globalized governance that often seems to bypass democratic processes, the relentless focus on materialism and consumerism as the path to happiness. It all starts to look like a meticulously crafted cage. We are kept busy, kept distracted, kept in a state of low-level stress and competition, never quite having the time or mental space to truly question the foundations of our reality. The architects of the reset, whoever they truly are not just figures of the past. Their influence is alive and well, subtly guiding the trajectory of human civilization. They operate through institutions, through narratives, through the very air we breathe. They don't need to show their faces or issue direct commands. They have built a system that largely runs itself, propagating their agenda through the inertia of established norms and beliefs. But here's the crucial part, the part that blows my mind and ignites a spark of hope. Awareness is the first step. By simply asking these questions, by daring to look at the architectural anomalies, by considering the possibility of a lost history and a grand deception, we begin to unravel their carefully constructed reality. We start to see the subtle cues, the inconsistencies, the patterns that have been hidden in plain sight. The scars of this deception are not just physical, they are psychological, societal, spiritual. They impact our energy choices, our political systems, our educational curricula, and our very understanding of what it means to be human. By understanding the true extent of this historical amnesia and the ongoing influence of those who profit from it, we empower ourselves to reclaim what was lost. We begin to demand different systems, different narratives, and a future built on truth, abundance, and genuine human potential. This isn't just about uncovering a forgotten civilization. It's about rediscovering ourselves. It's about remembering that humanity at its core is capable of so much more than the scarcity, conflict, and control that we are currently presented with. It's about looking at the world around us, not with cynicism, but with a profoundly awakened curiosity, ready to dismantle the lies and rebuild a future worthy of our true cosmic heritage. The journey continues, and the most important part of it is you, the awakened observer, the questioner, the one who dares to see beyond the veil. What will you discover next? And more importantly, what will you do with that knowledge? The power, my friends, is in the knowing. So, we've journeyed through the unsettling realization of a global cataclysm, a mud flood that buried a magnificent civilization, and the subsequent meticulously orchestrated historical reset. We've peeled back layers of official narrative to glimpse the shadowy hand of a controlling elite, rewriting history, indoctrinating generations, and weaponizing world's fairs to solidify their fabricated timeline. But let's pause for a moment and ask ourselves, what exactly did they take from us? Beyond the grand architecture and the lost maps, what was the true essence of Tartaria's cosmic technology? And how does its absence shape our reality today? This is where the speculation truly ignites, where we move beyond the physical evidence of buried buildings and into the realm of profound potential. When we talk about Tartarian cosmic technology, we're not just talking about a slightly more efficient light bulb or a faster steam engine. Oh no, my friends, we're talking about something fundamentally different. something that taps into the very fabric of the universe itself. Imagine, if you will, a world where energy isn't something you dig out of the ground, burn or chain to a grid with countless miles of copper wire. What if energy is simply there, omnipresent, an ambient field waiting to be harmonized with, to be drawn upon and utilized? This is the core of the free energy paradigm, the lost secret of Tartaria. Their technology, I believe, wasn't about generating energy in the way we understand it. It was about accessing it. It was about resonance, about frequency, about understanding the subtle, unseen forces that permeate our world. Think about those magnificent obelisks, those towering domes, the intricate spires adorning every grand building across the globe, from St. Petersburg to Washington, D.C., from Melbourne to San Francisco. We're told they are mere architectural flourishes, symbols of grandeur, or perhaps lightning rods. But what if they were far, far more? What if they were sophisticated antennae, resonant structures designed to tap into the Earth's own energetic field, or even the broader cosmic energies that flow around and through us? Perhaps they were part of a global wireless energy distribution network, a system where the very air vibrated with usable power. This concept of atmospheric or etheric energy blows my mind every time I consider it. It suggests that Tartarians understood principles of physics that we are only now, centuries later, beginning to tentatively re-explore. They likely understood the power of cymatics, the study of visible sound and vibration, and how specific frequencies could literally structure matter or generate force. They might have harnessed the Earth's Schumann resonance, or even understood how to manipulate the fabric of space-time on a localized level. It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But when you look at the sheer scale and uniformity of Tartarian-style architecture across continents, it starts to feel less like fantasy and more like a suppressed memory of a very different kind of science. The implications are staggering. A world powered by free energy would be a world of unimaginable abundance. No more reliance on finite resources, no more geopolitical conflicts over oil fields or gas pipelines, no more pollution from burning fossil fuels. Imagine clean, abundant energy for every home, every village, every city, freely available, perhaps even influencing weather patterns or facilitating instantaneous global communication in ways we can only dream of today. This wasn't just about convenience, it was about liberation. And this, my friends, brings us to the true motive behind the historical reset, the driving force behind the controlling elite's desperate need to erase Tartaria. It wasn't just about power in the conventional sense, but about establishing a scarcity paradigm. To control humanity, you must control its access to resources. If energy is free and abundant, if clean water is easily accessible, if food can be grown anywhere with advanced horticultural techniques, what incentive do people have to be controlled? What leverage does an elite have over a truly self-sufficient population? The answer, of course, is none. So they didn't just bury buildings, they buried the concept of abundance. They replaced a free, decentralized energy system with a centralized, metered, and highly profitable one. They introduced us to the idea of finite resources, of energy crises, of peak oil. They created entire industries around extraction, refinement, distribution, and ultimately the perpetual cycle of consumption and debt. You pay for your electricity, you pay for your gas, you pay for everything that was once, perhaps, freely available as a birthright of living on this planet. It's a brilliant, insidious strategy. By controlling the flow of energy, they control the flow of money, the flow of information, and ultimately the flow of human potential. They have effectively placed a governor on our collective engine, limiting our speed, our reach, and our capacity for true innovation and self-determination. But the suppression went even deeper than just technology. What if Tartarian cosmic technology wasn't just external, but also internal? What if their understanding of resonance and vibration extended to the human body, to consciousness itself? Imagine if they understood how to optimize human health, enhance cognitive abilities, or even facilitate forms of communication we now consider psychic. The ancient texts, the myths, the esoteric traditions, many hint at human capabilities far beyond what we consider normal. Could these be echoes of a time when humanity was more attuned to these cosmic energies, when our own bodies were seen as sophisticated instruments rather than mere biological machines? The historical reset, then, wasn't just about discrediting a past civilization. It was about downgrading human potential. It was about convincing us that we are inherently limited, fragile, and dependent. They stripped us of our true history, yes, but perhaps more tragically, they stripped us of our true understanding of ourselves and our place in the cosmos. They wanted us to believe in linear progress, starting from primitive origins, always needing to be guided and managed by a superior few. This is why, when you look at the world through a Tartarian lens, everything changes. The constant push for, quote one, technologies that often feel like re-engineered, less efficient versions of something ancient. The medical system focused on symptom management rather than holistic healing. The education system designed to produce compliant workers rather than critical thinkers. It's almost as if every facet of our modern society is meticulously crafted to maintain this scarcity paradigm, to keep us chasing the carrot of technological advancement, while never quite reaching the true abundance that was once our heritage. We see glimpses, though, don't we? In the suppressed inventions of Nikola Tesla, whose vision of wireless energy echoes the Tartarian dream, in the persistent whispers of free energy devices that are quickly bought out or discredited, in the growing interest in ancient wisdom, sacred geometry, and the power of sound and vibration. These are not just fringe ideas, they are the persistent echoes of a lost truth, trying to break through the carefully constructed veil of our reality. So, as we continue our exploration, I urge you to carry this profound question with you. If Tartaria represented a civilization living in harmony with cosmic technology, enjoying abundance, and perhaps even a heightened state of human potential, what does that say about the world we inhabit today? What are we truly capable of if we weren't constrained by a fabricated reality, built onto foundations of scarcity and historical amnesia? The answers, I suspect, are far more empowering and far more challenging than we could ever imagine. All right, let's dive back into this rabbit hole, shall we? We've journeyed through the astounding possibility of Tartaria, a global civilization with cosmic technology, wiped clean by a mud flood and then systematically erased from our collective memory. We've talked about the, quote 109, this shadowy cabal, orchestrating a grand historical reset, all to usher in an era of scarcity and control, far removed from the abundant free energy paradigm of Tartaria. But here's the thing, isn't it? This isn't just about what happened then. It's about what's happening now. The grand historical reset wasn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. The Cabal didn't just rewrite history. They engineered our present reality to ensure we remain locked in their manufactured scarcity matrix. Think about it. If Tartaria truly offered boundless free energy, what does that imply about our current world, where every joule, every kilowatt hour comes with a price tag, often a hefty one? This is where the implications become genuinely unsettling, because the mechanisms of control, the very chains that bind us to this scarcity paradigm, are woven into the fabric of our everyday lives. It's not just about energy, though that's certainly a massive piece of the puzzle. It's about our economy, our education, our very perception of what's possible for humanity. Consider the energy sector, for instance. We are told incessantly that fossil fuels are the lifeblood of our modern world, that without oil, gas, and coal, our civilization would grind to a halt. We're bombarded with narratives of energy crises, geopolitical struggles over resources, and the ever-present threat of climate change, all stemming from our reliance on these finite polluting sources. But what if this entire narrative is a carefully constructed illusion? What if the, quotidium that Tartaria harnessed, the cosmic electricity that powered their magnificent cities, is still all around us, waiting to be tapped? Think about the sheer audacity of it, to take a world of limitless potential, where energy flowed freely from the atmosphere and the earth, and replace it with a system of extreme cost and dependence. It blows my mind when I consider the implications. Every time you fill up your car, pay your electricity bill, or shiver through a winter night because heating is too expensive, you are participating, unknowingly, in this scarcity paradigm. You are a cog in the machine that keeps the memory of Tartarian abundance buried deep. This isn't just about suppressing a single invention. It's about suppressing an entire philosophy of existence. Imagine a world where energy isn't a commodity, where it doesn't drive wars or corporate profits. A world where every home, every factory, every vehicle could potentially draw its power directly from the ambient energy field. What would that do to the global economy? What would that do to the power structures that currently dictate our lives? It would dismantle them, wouldn't it? And that, my friends, is precisely why this truth remains so fiercely guarded. The architects of amnesia understood this perfectly. They knew that if humanity ever reconnected with the concept of free, abundant energy, their entire system of control, built on manufactured lack and dependence, would crumble. So they didn't just destroy the physical infrastructure of Tartaria, they went after the very idea of it. And how did they maintain this illusion today? It's multifaceted, insidious even. Let's start with the financial system. We live in a world of debt-based currency, where money is created out of thin air by private banks, loaned to governments and individuals, and then paid back with interest. This system inherently creates scarcity. You are constantly chasing money, working to pay off debts, striving for resources that are deliberately made finite. Contrast this with the Tartarian world, where the fundamental needs of life, energy, certainly, but also potentially resources derived from advanced material science, were freely available. How much pressure would be lifted? How much human ingenuity would be unleashed if we weren't constantly scrambling for survival within an artificially constrained economic model? Then there's the education system, We touched upon the blank slate generation, the orphans of the mud flood who were re-educated into a fabricated history. But this indoctrination didn't stop with them. It continues today. Our schools, universities, and academic institutions, while presenting themselves as bastions of truth and inquiry, often serve as gatekeepers of the official narrative. They teach a linear progression of history, from primitive caves to industrial revolutions, carefully omitting any mention of advanced civilizations like Tartaria. They present scientific, quote one theories, that align with the scarcity paradigm, dismissing anything that hints at alternative physics or free energy as pseudoscience or fringe theories. Think about it. How much are we not taught? How many brilliant minds, bubbling with curiosity and a desire to explore beyond the established boundaries, are subtly steered away from Fey, quote 113, or K, quote 114 den lines of inquiry? How many potential breakthroughs in energy, health, or consciousness are stifled before they even begin, simply because they don't fit the approved paradigm? This isn't necessarily a sinister plot by every teacher or professor. It's a systemic inertia, a curriculum designed to maintain the status quo, to keep us firmly within the intellectual confines of the scarcity matrix. And of course, we cannot ignore the role of the media. The mainstream media, in all its forms, acts as a powerful amplifier of the official narrative. Any alternative theory, any questioning of the established order is quickly labelled as conspiracy theory, fringe, or unscientific. This isn't just about dismissing ideas, it's about shaming and isolating those who dare to ask difficult questions. It creates a psychological barrier, a fear of ridicule, that prevents many from even exploring these concepts. We are subtly, yet powerfully encouraged to conform, to accept the reality presented to us, and to dismiss anything that threatens that comfortable, albeit limiting, perception. This ongoing suppression, this constant reinforcement of scarcity, has a profound psychological impact on us. It creates a kind of learned helplessness on a societal scale. We are taught to believe that our resources are finite, that we must compete fiercely for them, that suffering and struggle are inevitable parts of the human condition. This narrative limits our collective imagination, stifles our creativity, and prevents us from truly envisioning a world of abundance, cooperation, and advanced, harmonious living. We become accustomed to the chains, so much so that we often don't even see them. We accept them as the natural order of things. But here's the exhilarating part, the part that gives me genuine hope. Despite all this, the truth persists. The anomalies remain. Those magnificent Tartarian structures, half buried or repurposed, still stand, whispering their secrets to those willing to listen. The old maps, tucked away in forgotten archives, still depict a vibrant, unified world that doesn't fit our official history. The sheer scale and sophistication of these ancient buildings, far exceeding the purported capabilities of their time, continue to baffle conventional historians. Why do these questions keep resurfacing? Why, despite decades, even centuries of systematic erasure and suppression, do people like you and I find ourselves drawn to these ideas, compelled to dig deeper? I believe it's because there's an intuitive sense within us, a deep-seated knowing that something is profoundly wrong with the story we've been told. It's like a faint echo from a forgotten past, a memory of our true potential, trying to break through the layers of manufactured amnesia. The cracks in the matrix are appearing. More and more people are waking up, questioning the narratives, looking beyond the headlines and seeking out alternative explanations. The internet, for all its flaws, has become an invaluable tool for sharing these suppressed histories and connecting curious minds across the globe. We are no longer entirely dependent on the gatekeepers of information. What if this awakening, this collective curiosity, is precisely what the architects of amnesia fear the most? What if the rediscovery of Tartaria isn't just about reclaiming a lost history, but about reclaiming our lost potential? What if understanding the truth about cosmic technology and free energy isn't just an academic exercise, but the key to unlocking an entirely new future for humanity? A future where scarcity is an obsolete concept, where creativity and innovation flourish, and where we are truly masters of our own destiny, rather than cogs in someone else's machine. This journey we're on, exploring the secrets of Tartaria, isn't just about uncovering historical facts. It's about intellectual liberation. It's about empowering ourselves to challenge the narratives that limit us, to question the systems that bind us, and to demand a world that reflects our true, boundless potential. The architects of amnesia have done their best to keep us in the dark, but the light, my friends, is beginning to break through. And it's a light that promises to illuminate not just a forgotten past, but a truly incredible future. Are you ready to truly see it? Are you ready to continue peeling back the layers of this grand illusion? Because the deeper we go, the more profound the implications become, and the more urgent it feels to share this understanding. The truth of Tartaria isn't just history. It's a blueprint for what we could be.